So next we have the Bleeding Edge panel up here. We have Raja Sahi from Pixelogic, and John Vickery from Zeroth, and Phil Lelyveld from ETC.
All right, so while they're sitting down, I'll do a brief intro, which, as Craig just said, this is the bleeding edge of media and entertainment research. I'm Phil Lelyveld. I run the Immersive Media program at the USC Entertainment Tech Center. This session is going to be 3 10-minute presentations. We're going to explore the new uses of AI, illustrate the potential of AI, and examine the ramifications of AI. So first up is going to be Raja Sahi, CTO of Pixelogic Media, and he'll address next generation distribution solutions for studios, broadcasters, and digital retailers. Then John Vickery, who's the co-founder and COO of Zeroth Industries, will talk about democratizing access and use of AI. Then finally, I'll cover some of the ethical issues related to AI, and I promise it will be painless and short. So without any more delay, I turn it over to Raja.
Thank you so much. Just a couple of things. Usually somebody had once said, don't apologize in advance. It just gives people a reason to complain. But then also the problem is that sometimes I tend to admit freely and frankly what people can divine any other way. This is a very text-heavy presentation. I'm also very uncoordinated. So I've minimized the number of slides. So please excuse me on that. All right. So first of all, just a little bit about Pixelogic. We come in where the finished picture and sound is presented to us, and we basically put in our magic, which is essentially the end-to-end localization services and distribution services. So things subtitling, audio dubbing, distribution to Netflix, and so on. So all the fun, really interesting, creative stuff is already done by the time it comes to us. And usually it's somewhat very mundane and boring in terms of the stuff we have to do with it. So, some of the more kind of details in terms of what we are doing. So for the localization side, we have subtitling, closed captioning, text and metadata, dubbing, audio description, audio services. In terms of the distribution, it's not only digital delivery to retailers, it's also the ideas of digital cinema, mastering, and physical disc authoring. Because we have multiple silos and we have multiple businesses that are basically talking to each other, or they want to talk to each other, our objective at Pixelogic was to build out a platform that was an end-to-end platform, essentially servicing all the business units, such that the communication overhead was minimized as far as any of the workflows were concerned. So for this, our platform is called Felix. And if that logo looks a little bit like the MSDN logo, it was a mistake. It was not by design. Felix as such is a hybrid system in terms of having certain flows that are on-prem and certain flows that are on cloud. Our objective is that as bandwidth decreases, cloud storage decreases, presumably flows will move more and more to the cloud in the future, but right now there are certain flows, such as, for example, for digital cinema, that have to be done on-prem. At the center of Felix is basically the end-to-end system, and around it we have a series of tools that are basically for the different lines of businesses that we have. Our goal, so is the one goal that we have, which is we have to do secure global day-and-date distribution with increasingly shorter windows. And I think the key points in this statement are, first of all, secure. There is a very high demand of security because at this point in time, we have finished picture and sound, often pre-release. So it's very important that the assets be kept safe. Global, which is that because of the just demands from the digital retailers, there's a very heavy load in terms of the number of subtitle and audio files that basically need to be created. And increasingly shorter. There is a heavy demand in terms of decreasing the windows that we have in front of us. So what today is done in about 120 days, they want done in about 80. By they, I mean the studios and our bosses. So, that's where we are going. Now, how do we do this? There's a few kind of, low-hanging fruit. We can reduce wait times by having common dashboards and so on and so forth. We can use more resources in terms of more people. We can't add more hours in the day, but we can run multiple shifts. We can do things across the globe. We can do parallel and distributed processing. By distributed processing, we can have multiple people do different things, like somebody's identifying OCR data, somebody's identifying nudity, somebody's identifying labels in the movie, and so on. Or we can do parallel in the sense that basically somebody starts the creation of the data while somebody's actually QCing it for, let's say, as we go through the movie. We can move creation and workflows upstream. So A is that whenever we get some data, how much can we automatically verify? How much can we just find out about it so that we can catch issues earlier on? The other one we've had a lot of luck with, which is basically start processing before picture lock. So let's say somebody gives us a version that's not necessarily complete. Can we start working on that and use technologies internally in order to figure out, well, okay, now that we got a new cut, what matches and what doesn't? And so we can conform our subtitle files, metadata files, and so on. And this has actually allowed us to speed up workflows quite a bit. Now, most importantly, as far as this is concerned, use AI. Now, as far as we are concerned, there are two major uses, obviously, which is A is in the creation of data, and the second is in the verification of data. And that's where some problems start coming in. But before the problems, just in terms of like an overall landscape as far as where all we are currently using AI, and the one place where we are not is A is, of course, speech to text. So we've had a few demos as far as speech to text is concerned. This is real-time closed captioning, scripting, subtitling, on-screen text detection, text language translation, think Google Translate for that. Audio dubbing, we can, we need actors list and images so that basically we can pre-create audio dubbing Pro Tools sessions and send them out to the facilities so that they can just pre-fill certain areas rather than have to figure out, well, which actor is coming on the screen at what time. Foreign language detection and automated dubbing. Now, we saw a couple of demos over here, and legal issues aside, this should be possible, but of course, it remains to be seen whether Scarlett Johansson is okay putting her image with Spanish dialogue in an automated way and whether the legal situation will allow for that or not. But anyways, we hope that it would be possible at one day. Metadata extraction for compliance purposes. Different countries have different requirements for cuts. So essentially, we need to identify all sorts of metadata and then kind of edit down the features for distribution in the different regions. Finally, we do some applications for different studios. For example, we did a iPad app for a studio where basically you clicked on an actor's face and you got like information about it. So like, we are definitely interested in bounding boxes for actors' faces and so on. So a few moments of clarity through this whole exercise of implementing AI. So the first problem that we come across is that we absolutely need 100% accuracy. 99.999 is not good enough. We cannot miss that 1 in a million, otherwise we will get into a huge problem. Things are not perfect as yet. And one of the things that we learned when we did some testing is that if we give people a bad starting point, like let's say it's a subtitle file, which is let's say an 85% confidence level, it takes people more time to fix the file than to basically start from scratch. And that's causing a lot of issues for us. Things we can do today is that we know this will happen. We know that things will get better, and we know that technologies will change. And as long as we are holding some sort of API, and as long as our systems are capable of doing it, we know we will be able to integrate stuff in the future, even if we don't want to integrate it for whatever reason today. The next is we can work with the confidence levels. Like the idea is that, okay, that if certain items have a high confidence, like there are some events that have a high 90s confidence, just include those and just don't include the others that basically have a low confidence level. That's given us a lot of luck. Verification. This is where, let's say, we have a subtitle track that somebody has given, and we do an analysis to figure out basically, well, which of these events correlates strongly to what AI tells us. So here what we can say is, let's QC this in a non-linear sense. Let's QC low confidence level followed by high confidence level, so that basically we can say that, okay, well, these are the areas that we feel are worse than others. Let's catch them first so we can throw the file back while we are basically QCing the rest of it. So that's given us a lot of luck in terms of reducing time. Finally, keep metrics to see how close we are getting. And this is where the system needs to run its processes, go through the human chain, but then figure out and say, well, how did these two relate to each other? Am I out of time? Or no? So because it says 0, so I have no idea. So, okay, so an interesting keep metrics case that we had was that we had a vendor who, when we looked at the translation quality that he had done from English to German, something was off. It just wasn't looking right. And we just for shits and giggles did a Google Translate, and it turned out he had just done a Google Translate and given the file back to us. and charged us about $3 a minute for it. So that was not good. So what we do now is that we actually do a pre-Google Translate for every event, show it on the screen, and say, you can copy it if you want to. That's all fine and dandy. Or you can use it as a starting point. And what we do is we then do a correlation to say, well, okay, how many events came through that were one-to-one identical, or what was the correlation between those two events? So we know, A, Google Translate is getting better, or we can say the people are getting, worse or lazy or things along those lines. So it's an interesting situation. Of course, I use Google Translate. We are in this case using Google Translate, but we are, that was just the easiest to integrate with as far as we are concerned, at least right now. All things are not equal. There are many different solutions to do many different things, and this is where, even for example, and sorry for the PG-13-ness, but just a simple thing as, I say simple because theoretically when I think nudity, it should be simple, but there are systems that do male nudity better than female nudity. There are systems that do, aspects of nudity different from each other. There are systems, like you feed Baywatch through it, it'll just give you like a 80% nudity hit, which is not good for us, obviously. We've seen very different solutions depending on, well, okay, what type of an item are you identifying? Is it a building? Is it a brand? Is it an actor's face? And obviously what we have to do is run it through 25 different solutions in order to get the one thing that we need at the end. The type of content, animated content, non-animated content, a very dark scene versus a light scene. What was the quality? Was it a proxy? Was it a high-res image? Things along those lines. We also see systems are improving. What's true today is definitely not true 6 months from today. So we have to keep going back and spend a lot of cycles in terms of just identifying, okay, well, they became better, they didn't. And these guys accelerated at a much heavier rate. So there's just a lot of stuff we need to choose from. Inconsistent ways of reporting outputs and confidence levels. A lot of times we get the output, but we don't get a confidence level. So we don't know, well, okay, well, it seems they got some things right and some then they didn't. But if you give us a confidence level, we can do some more stuff with it. There are not those many ways in which there is consistency of reporting, especially when it comes to metadata. Like everybody has their own file format that they're using and things along those lines. So we are trying to work with Movie Labs at this point to try to create like a file format that hopefully people can adopt as a standard over time. So that was one of the things we can do, create and follow standards and normalize and correlate system output in order to create a master data set. So this is where, for example, Veritone and Gray Meta come into place, where they're integrating with multiple vendors and giving us one application, one API to integrate with at the end of the day. But either we work with them or we have to kind of do the same ourselves across a different set of people. The last thing is kind of like the whole security aspect. So today, a lot of AI companies have cloud-based solutions. The content owners, the studios, for their own content, they're for their own workflows, they are fine going to the cloud. When they give the content to us, we are held to a slightly higher level of diligence than in some cases studios themselves are, because we have to follow CDSA regulations, tier 0. In some cases we have to have air gap production networks and storage of assets, and so it just becomes a little bit difficult sometimes for us to do what the studios themselves are doing. The CDSA has recently changed a bit, which is good. I have about 5 seconds left, so I'll just run through this. We in turn cannot, for example, legally upload content to Google Translate to get it translated as far as from the, or not necessarily Google Translate, but let's say we want to do speech to text. We cannot upload the content to Google to get it speech to text because it's not okay per the CDSA regulations unless we go to the studio and ask them, can we do it, which opens a can of worms that we'd rather not open sometimes. Things we can do is that basically the CDSA or some other body needs to basically figure out how to evaluate and certify the security of cloud-based solutions, saying that these are okay, these have passed, and we can use them safely as far as the pre-release content is concerned. And lastly, for any company that is not doing it right now, if you can container something and give it to us so that we can deploy it on-prem or in a VPC, then obviously that's very much appreciated. And final thoughts is just that, just today we see a lot of different things coming together, and I think that's been happening for the last 10 years. And, even in our industry, the more data we grab from automated, using automated techniques allows us to do more and more in a faster and faster way. So it's a very exciting time, and, thanks for listening.
So hello, my name is John Vickery. I am, as was told, the co-founder and chief operating officer of a little startup that could called Zeroth. industries. Our mission and what we're doing is we built a platform that lets anyone create an artificial intelligence powered virtual person. So as a test case, so I want to thank, by the way, Mark Chiolis for helping me, and this guy, God, I can't, what's your name?
My name is Mark Shubin.
It's a lie. For helping us pull this together. So let me just give you an example, then I'm going to show you how we built it, maybe show you a couple of other little things as well. So, where are you from?
I grew up in Hoboken, New Jersey, the city of which New York is merely a suburb.
Do you own a car?
As a true New Yorker, I have never owned a car or a home.
Right. And here's, are you real? And the power of this is this, it's some fun interactions like this, but it is capturing and preserving stories in a conversational fashion, right? So, how did you get into the television business?
I got into the business through the efforts of the brother of one of my brother's partners at his law firm, and he was working as one of Barbra Streisand's managers at the time. And he's the one that first connected me with anyone in the television business.
And one of my favorite stories, Mark, honestly, what is no operas, no x-rays?
So this no opera, no x-rays that I'm wearing now is based on a discovery I made about the first pediatric radiology department, which was at Boston Children's Hospital, which was gas lit at the time. But the x-ray machine needed electric power. There was no power company in Boston. But a nearby opera house had put in generators for its own electric lighting. So they ran a line from the hospital to the opera house to get power for the x-ray machine. But the opera house generators only ran when they were doing an opera. So no opera, no x-rays.
See, this presentation's awesome because I don't have to get you to laugh. He just takes it all for me. One more quick one. What's the best piece of advice your father gave you?
The greatest influence that my father had on me was in teaching me the value of vacations and sleep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Have a nice day.
So, let me show you the actual product. How did we build this? This is our back end. And we built it keeping in mind that the key to this is getting content in, making it easy to get the content in, getting that content smarter, and then figuring out how to distribute easily, right, to get it out there so people can consume it. So to get content in, there's really two ways. First is what we call a stored response. So here's all the stories that we've captured from Mark, and it looks something like this. So there are cues along the top that are the things that are going to drive and help inform which answer is the right one. The video, which is his story, which we actually use transcription, so it's simple speech to text to create the text down there at the bottom. I also have the ability, phone's ringing, to add a file if I want, an audio file, a link, so maybe it's an annotation. And so all of that data that creates the brain lives inside of here. So we start by building those. Then I have an activity feed. So every interaction that happens, whether it's through this machine, my partner who's been talking to Mark back in LA, or through that device out there, everything shows up. And so I can actually see all of these. And so, for example, we're using natural language processing to interpret. So and goodbye is a 98%, it's 98% sure that it should trigger the have a nice day response that we saw. So now I just hit thumbs up, and next time somebody says, and have a nice day, or some variation of it, it automatically triggers the right response. So effectively, AI Shubin gets smarter based on how many people interact with it, and then curating those interactions and curating that content. If I find that I don't think it's the right answer, I can hit thumbs down and assign it either to an answer that exists, right, and say, no, that was the wrong one, this is the right one, and he's smarter, or just add a new one. So, oh, nobody ever asked that question before. So, you know, I need to go add another answer to make him smarter again, so that it's not a linear thing. This is a living, breathing product, meaning the character themselves, that gets smarter over time, has a richer corpus of information they can describe, and then just creates more of a conversational feel over time. So clearly with Mark, and love the outfit, I do. He was kind enough to go into his studio. So from a scalability standpoint, let's say we wanted him to answer more questions, it requires pickups, right? He's gonna have to go back into Set Studio. So with our platform though, and I'm embarrassed to show you this because I'm awful, but I built me in my study, right? By the way, I have a 19-year-old son who finds me wholly uninteresting. He won't actually talk to the virtual me. He looks at me, he's like, why? That's weird, you're right here. But, you know, you can do some more fun stuff because it can be more of a Snapchat type feel. Do you like scotch?
Yeah. Glamorangi, hands down.
And then it doesn't have to be the video of me. I can actually assign other clips, so hopefully this isn't, well, it's true. What's your favorite number?
69, dudes!
And it's as easy as actually taking this and shooting myself answering. It is as easy as assigning that video clip like Bill and Ted there, or just sitting in my living room and using the camera on my computer, or any combination thereof. We're agnostic. And then finally, once you're built, or you've built your said character, we built this connection here, so you can actually tweet me, and get the same response. Because once the data is in, it's all the same text, it's all the same links, it's everything, and so we can distribute it across the board, including, and if you want, I can show you Mark and or me and or whoever other character I've got on my phone in an app. You can tweet me, you can SMS me. In fact, my partner got out of a meeting in New York and tweeted me saying, or texted me, great meeting, let's talk. And he tweeted or SMS'd the virtual me, who replied back, can't talk right now, something goofy like that. And he's like, that's weird. And then an hour later, he called me, he's like, why didn't you call me back? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He never actually texted me. Texted the virtual me, you idiot. Yeah, it's amazing how actually suspending disbelief, it happens pretty quick. So a couple of the implementations we're doing, again, we're the brain, right? So I don't want to be in the business of, and actually part of the previous discussion, we're working with a company to build a virtual professor that's a Vulcan Star Trek cadet. And so it's an animated, cool looking cartoony thing, and it's going to go text to speech to animation. So a real person's going to type in all the answers for this professor, and the professor is automatically going to animate and talk. So that's one of the things we're doing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we're working with a hologram company. So I could literally take the same footage we have of Mr. Shubin over there, give it to them, and you could talk to a hologram. And I'm sure some of you have done that, but doing it in person when there's a hologram that's twice your size, that is bloody realistic, and talking to them is a trip. It's really, really interesting. So that is what we're up to at Zeroth.
I'm starting from the perspective of augmented and virtual reality, because that's what I've been working in for the last 4 years. And while the market breaks them into two specific separate things, augmented and virtual, in reality it's a continuum from the full real world with a few virtual objects in it all the way over to an entirely virtual world. And our goal is to basically try and make everything as realistic as possible, because a well-crafted VR experience or VR object rewires your brain just like a real object that you're observing.
We already live in a construct of reality. So the idea that we could create a virtual environment that is as real or less real is a complicated question, because just because it's virtual doesn't mean it's not real. Given enough complexity of the stimuli, it could be indistinguishable.
This isn't real.
Real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
Okay, so we take it from there and we throw in social media because you want to have a social experience when you're in this space. Add in crowdsourcing and world building because you want to create an entire environment. Throw in the Internet of Things because the Internet of Things is either going to directly inform your experience by giving you data that you can respond to, or feed data to the world around you so it responds based on the IoT input. And then finally, artificial intelligence, which is what we're here to talk about, which will shape and personalize the information you're getting, the narrative structure, your avatar's behavior, essentially your worldview. So this is a shot of a music video that was conceived, written, directed, color-timed, edited, completed entirely by a suite of AI tools. Sachi and Sachi paid for this and then took it to a film festival where they showed it with 12 music videos done by humans, and the audience could not tell which was which. Admittedly, music videos are not the most coherent things, but it was really good-looking stuff. Okay, and keep in mind also, while AI can win at chess and at Go, AI can now also outbet and outbluff champion poker players. Think about it. They can act with limited information, and they can act unpredictably.
What would it mean if a character directly acknowledged you in a space, gave you a task, invited you on a quest? We talk about breaking the fourth wall, but this goes beyond that because now the characters are responsible for the emotions of the audience directly.
Where we're going is not VR movies anymore. It's characters who live with us and that we believe in.
What would the future look like? What would it be like if you actually had an interactive character in your living room, in your classroom, in your kitchen, reading stories to your children?
How does it work to have two people in a story? How does it work when Lucy isn't just acknowledging me, but is acknowledging me and Pete and Jess and understands our identity? How does it work when Lucy isn't just in VR? She's cross-platform. You come home, maybe you watch a movie on TV with Lucy. The work of storytellers, when you actually have these holographic characters, no longer becomes these 90-minute bite-sized chunks of movies, but becomes one character.
Given an audio recording
So we've all
of
seen
Obama
this, we've all
speaking,
talked about
this
it. The fact is that we can basically fake anything using visual effects, so that now we live in a post-evidence society. Facebook and others, as we heard before, have required technology that can remove and add objects in video, even in live video, and add special effects to them. So what does that do to our perception of the world? As our previous speaker pointed out, can you name any of these celebrities? All of these images were created by an AI that was fed images of celebrities and told create new ones. So these are all artificial photos of artificial people. So as we move forward on the ethics side, do we have a right to know when voice, image, and data are altered to change their meaning or that they've been faked? Do we have a right to understand how the data we receive has been filtered? And do we have a right to an audit trail to understand the framework for decisions, not specific decisions on how it made individual choices for you, but the framework that it is using based on its interpretation of your personality to feed effects and experiences to you? As was reported last summer in the MIT Review article, The missing piece is that there's no clear way for AIs right now to communicate to the average person how they're creating that profile of you and how they're feeding you information. The bottom quote says, "How well can we get along with machines that are unpredictable and inscrutable?" And as was reported last week, although there are disputes about how really accurate this is, it seems as if scientists working in artificial intelligence are sharing information less than other computer science researchers have done in the past. For many reasons, code and results are not being shared adequately, making it harder to compare, understand, and improve. So there are a number of initiatives globally that are working on the ethics of artificial intelligence. I've listed 5 of them here. There are more. But none of them has seemed to, as of yet, gotten traction in terms of the public imagination. Last week, also the New York Times had a really good story on how Harvard, Stanford, and USC have courses in computer science, artificial intelligence, and ethics that are being targeted for the curriculum of computer science and AI students. On Thursday, the European Union is having a one-day conference on preserving democracy in the digital age. Their focus is on news media and on Russian interference in European democratic activities, and it's framed with the quote, "fake news." The message I'm going to be delivering over there is that in a world where everything can be faked, it may make more sense to identify, elevate, and reward the bounded set of data that we can verify to be true, reliable, and undistorted. But as was, Craig German, when he opened the conference, talked about the Turing test. This writer, whose name I will not try to pronounce, talks about the fact that algorithms may be irreducibly alien. Some kinds of mistakes we won't recognize, either because they are subtle or because they don't resemble human error patterns at all. So those of us who are old enough to read Isaac Asimov might remember his 3 laws of robotics, which essentially means that robots won't harm humans and they'll preserve themselves as long as that doesn't involve harming humans. But what if with this new AI, it's more what you call guidelines rather than actual rules? We'll find out.
They used to say guns don't kill people. People do. Well, people don't. Let's watch the weapons make the decisions.
The nation is still recovering from yesterday's incident, which officials are describing as some kind of automated attack.
This short film is more than just speculation. It shows the results of integrating and miniaturizing technologies that we already have. We have an opportunity to prevent the future you just saw, but the window to act is closing fast.
So I can't leave you with that. I have to leave you with puppies and kittens. So, so let me just show you a short piece of Fall in Love, which was at Tribeca and at Sundance this year. And this is it. Thank you.
To help Oculus show off the emotional power of virtual reality, we recreated the 36 questions to fall in love.
What is your most treasured memory?
To make this possible, we leveraged artificial intelligence via natural language processing, developed a proprietary facial recognition algorithm, and paired it with stereo performance capture to recreate human conversation in virtual reality.
When did you last sing to yourself?
Ooh, good one.
What's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen?
I think the most beautiful thing is when you see kids playing together.
We introduced it at the Tribeca Film Festival, and the response was,
I get to talk to her for days.
I want to take him home with me.
We live in a world of text-based relationships, but with text, there's a loss of emotion. As a culture, we're losing emotion, we're losing connection. For me, this was a chance to do something where we could create a whole new type of human connection.
If we become friends, what should I know about you?
Thank you.